Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Lineage Break, a Grand Archive TCG podcast. I am your host, Cam, and with me back making his return is
Return
Steve.
of the King.
Hey, Steve.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm back.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
We're back. A dinosaur's tale.
I went into hibernation last week. Sorry. Work was absolutely miserable for that week, so it was just it was real tough to have the energy to come do this.
It's true. I agree.
But
Someday,
I'm here. We're here. We're filming.
Back. The OGs.
Yeah.
The crew. Someday, you know, if you subscribe to our Patreon, we can not work anymore.
Right.
That doesn't exist. That was a joke. So welcome back to the show, everybody. We have some stuff to talk about. This week is very exciting for lots of people that aren't us.
Yeah.
Woo! It's Anime Expo this weekend.
Woo! Yay! I wish I could be in California right now.
Yeah. I feel like that sentiment comes up far too often in my life. You know, I wish I could be in California right now. Because AX looks cool. We're getting an exclusive promo for Grand Archive of Imperious Highwayman or something. I don't know. It's the X one that gets bigger. It looks cute. It's got a little AX stamp on it.
That is the FOMO for me right now.
Yeah.
I just don't want the one. I just want the big AX stamp.
Yeah.
I want a card with a stamp.
It's true.
Anime Boston 1 stamps?
I know, right? Like, when are we? Come on. I know you watch the show. You can make it happen.
Yeah,
the Northeast is crying. We are literally crying.
I guess we get no love.
There was like Anime North. That's like pretty close to us. We probably should have just like went to that or something.
Passport.
Well, that's an us issue, right? That's not a
but we could make it a them issue.
That's true. Yeah, right across the border next time. You know, there's a lot. Anime New York is like a swell time. I've been there a few times.
The Kineticon.
Well, now you're...
I'm just stretching, man, you know.
Now we're reaching a little bit.
What is the one in New Hampshire? AAC?
I didn't even know that they... I guess everybody has one, right? Does Maine have one?
No, I don't know, maybe. So there's one in New Hampshire called, like, Another Anime Convention or something like that. It's like a super cursed place.
It sounds super cursed.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see you there, GA. They should do the... Did you hear about... I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before. Did you hear about the thing that MetaZoo is doing, where like they have like a tour bus, and they're like, it's like a con on wheels, and they like, tour bus to your city and have like a little pop-up shop.
That's neat.
It's like really cute for like a terrible game that nobody plays, but it's kind of cute. Yeah, GA, when are we doing that? Get the little tour bus. Yeah.
I can take some time off from work if you need a cute face for your tour bus.
Yeah, it's true. That's on the side of the tour bus or in the tour bus or both. Why not both? Right. Yeah, porque no los dos. Right. Also in California is very exciting for our dear friend Shinja from TM32. Is the registrations are up for Wenginals. Woo!
Yay!
Very cool. We're also very sad that we can't make it to Wenginals.
Yeah.
Well, we'll move to California someday.
Yeah.
I told Shinja this week that I would close Webway Games and come work for Shinja's collectibles and cards. So that's on the table.
Right, and maid outfit, Stephen.
It's true. Yeah,
it's also on the table for that. I just require room and board.
Right. That's not so bad.
Feed me sometimes.
Room and board, free cardboard, food sometimes. Yeah. That seems all right. He would probably love that because he gets out of the, he puts you in the maid costume. People stop asking,
Right.
Like, once they've had the,
Right.
What's that, the quote from Step Brothers? Anyways. We'll get there. So welcome back. Exciting stuff. Today, so we mentioned on the podcast last week how we've had a bit of a trickle of spoilers. So since content creation spoilers ended, we've gotten like a few here and there from the dev team have sprinkled stuff in at 4 a.m.
We were told none.
Yeah, it's true. Silidar loves it too much, he loves the leaks.
He does.
So we've gotten a few spoilers, and we've realized that it's kind of hard for us to track what cards we've talked about, and that means it's probably hard for you guys to track what cards we've talked about, which seems bad for you, the content viewer. So we're going to be a little bit smarter, and there's a couple of cards we want to talk about today that we think are super important, and then we have something that we want to talk about in regards to those cards as a sort of overarching theme that we want to discuss as far as the Grand Archive goes.
It's one of the things that one of the type of themes that I'm excited about for card games.
Oh yeah, well, maybe we are opposed in that. So the couple of cards that we want to talk about, we can start there. Steve, do you want to pull up those cards for us?
Let me grab them real quick. Boom. So, first one we got.
She's cute.
She's a cute girl.
Yeah.
We love to see that here.
Nice.
We love to see that here. So, it's a 2-cost ally, unique assassin ranger, Gawain, chivalrous thief.
Yeah.
Words are hard.
Yeah.
I have a 2nd grade reading level. So it's fine.
Sure. This is like a level 4. It's it's tough.
So unique ally assassin ranger. She's a 1/1. Level 2 bonus. True sight.
Sweet.
I think more cards need true sight.
I agree. Underrated.
I feel like stealth is a really hard thing to deal with in a lot of situations.
Super true.
So for a card like this, I think it's awesome that they just added it. Then we have class bonus. On champion hit, you can sacrifice her. And if you do, you get to look at your opponent's memory and discard a card from it.
Hey, that seems pretty good, Steve.
Hey, that seems really good. It's, in a game full of random effects for discarding, when you get to pick, that seems good.
Yeah, so like, if you guys didn't realize, what we're going to talk about a little bit today is the effects that sort of, I guess, discard in general, but more specifically targeted discard. A lot of people call it like hand attack. It depends where you're coming from a TCG background. But it's always like sort of a tricky thing to balance because obviously, as we said, Gawain is a very, very powerful card. And we have one other one that we'd like to talk about that's pretty similar.
Oh boy. Is it similar?
Yeah.
I think it is similar, but at the same time, I think this card is absolutely bonkers. So let's, without further ado, let me introduce Fractal of Intrusion. It's a 3-cost Fantasia Cleric Fractal. Again, gotta love that Cleric keyword. It's a water card. On enter, you can banish a card with floating memory in your graveyard. When you do, look at your target opponent's memory and discard a card from it. And it has reservable, so this is also just, a mana rock, which is so good.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best one that we've gotten so far from the Fractals. A couple of them are really strong. I think the one that like taps to prevent 1 damage is pretty strong, but again, this sort of targeted discard effect is kind of absurd, I think. So before Gawain and Intrusion here, the only method that we had in the game to interact with your opponent's influence was Prismatic Edge, banishes a card at random from your opponent's memory when you reveal a wind card. So it was a level 3 card, B required either you or your opponent to have access to wind, and usually, unless you or your opponent was playing water, was not the most efficient use of that card, so it didn't see a whole lot of play. There were some matchups where, you would see these sort of like flicker prismatic effects, especially against Xander as Lorraine, but it wasn't super prominent, so we've sort of had a Grand Archive game as a whole where discard isn't really a problem. And so with Fractured Crown, we're going to get both of these cards that are both, I think, a little bit more balanced than traditional targeted discard because they do have some conditions to be met. But yeah, it's our first time that we're getting actual interaction with your opponent's hand. And so we wanted to talk today, and Steve and I haven't discussed this previously, so we'll see if we, if we find some sort of middle ground, but about how we feel about this sort of effect in general and what it means for the game, and if we think that, discard effects are good for the health of a card game, because I used to have one opinion, and I've sort of changed my opinion semi-recently.
Interesting.
So how do you feel about this
About
stuff?
discard effects?
Yeah, just, what this sort of means for the health of the game and the sort of the landscape of, deck building.
It's like a tight line, right? Like, I'm okay with it in the most part because, it's just part of the game. And into, like, a control aspect of a game, you want to stop your opponent from doing stuff. And in
Right.
a game where your hand is your resource, that seems stronger than most
I think
games.
so, yeah.
So like in Magic, I'm fine with like hand removal because
Sure.
it's just like, yeah, whatever, I'm taking a card, whatever, you have mana, you do whatever you need.
Mhm.
And most stuff in Magic says non-land. So you're
Right.
never actually affecting the ability to play cards. You're
Sure.
just removing the cards to play.
Right.
However, I feel differently in a
Sure.
game where your hand size is also how you play cards.
Right.
So I'm kind of conflicted because,
Right.
like, on one hand, I really like effects like this, and I really like the control aspect that they bring. On the other hand, it worries me in a design space for a game where your hand is your resource,
Right.
where it's like, if someone starts to pop off with stuff like this, how are you ever going to come back?
Right.
And it feels like if you can do it early enough, you can just lock someone out of the game
Mhm.
and they'll never even be able to play. And
Yeah.
that worries me.
Right. Yeah, I think that we are probably going to come to the agreement that I think this is maybe not exactly a problem, but it's definitely worrisome. Like you said, I think for me, so like we both come from a Magic background, and you guys know that. You've watched the show. We mention Magic a lot. Just because it's such a like
It's a big game.
it's like a common ground
Right.
that so many people can like relate to,
Right.
right? Where Magic being my first card game, I sort of became used to this like targeted hand attack sort of effect. And as like a player identity, I like usually played those decks that played these cards. And it wasn't until I stopped playing a whole lot of Magic that I sort of changed my mind about how I felt about them, where I think any card where its sole purpose is to stop your opponent from playing the game is not necessarily good for the health or like for the fun of the game. You think about, I think like in a competitive setting, it's probably fine, right? And we'll talk about that some more, but I always think about these cards in the sort of, you play against somebody who's like a little bit more casual and they're trying to, do something that's a little bit harder to accomplish or a little bit, like out of left field and needs a whole lot of pieces. These sort of like Rube Goldberg machines, that people like to build, especially in the casual scene. And cards like this just like tear those sorts of plans apart. You think about these singular combo decks, like think about like Erupting Rhapsody, which is this very specific 2-card combo deck, and if you play your Fractal of Intrusion or hit them with your Gawain and you steal their Erupting Rhapsody, it's just like almost game losing, if they can't find another one in time.
Mhm.
And it being a single draw step game makes that a little bit harder. So I do think that, like you said, I think it's a little worrisome to have these effects in the game.
So I kind of want to talk about something you just brought up too, because like there is a distinction between casual play
Right,
and competitive play.
for sure.
And it's a hard line to walk because in one hand, right, if you're coming to an event, locals,
Sure.
you want to practice your competitive deck.
Right,
But everyone playing at that locals might not be in the same mindset. And
Yeah.
that's a hard line to like balance a game around because
Right.
like you want to placate your competitive players because they're the people that are going to be spending the money. They're going to be going to
Right.
your events. However, I think it's almost just as important to placate your casual
I
people
agree,
that are
yeah.
just going to play the game and drive the local scenes.
right.
So it's like weird to have like, do you put in the control stuff?
Mm,
Do you put in hard counter spells to stop your opponent from playing?
sure.
Do you put in the hand hate? Do you put in all of the stall stuff? Now, so early.
Yeah, I think
Because like now the casual players that are going to come to these events that aren't familiar with competitive card games and aren't familiar with kind of stuff like that are going to have a very bad time.
right.
And it might stop them from playing the game.
Yeah,
which is not a good thing
surely.
to have for like a small community, right?
Right.
It's kind of like a double-edged sword, and I think
Right. Yeah, I think
I only bring it up because I have a couple of our casuals in mind.
yeah, that's what I was
Who,
going to say. I think about, our local scene and I always feel it's a hard line to walk where like a lot of us, especially us who are like, super enfranchised in this game and taking it quite seriously as a competitive game.
I wouldn't say I've been taking anything quite seriously recently, but yeah, no, I knew what you mean.
Yeah, it's hard for everybody wants what they want, right? And so we obviously want to build our locals, but we also want to be practicing these sort of competitive decks. And so we have a lot of people at our locals that are competitive players, but there are also some that aren't, which is really, it's a difficult line to walk where you still want those people to have fun. And I think currently there are a couple of unfun decks in the game to play against, most every Lorraine deck and most every Rye deck as well, I think are pretty unfun to play against for the casual players. But
I honestly think there's only one fun deck for casual players.
Yeah, Sylvie's fun. Yeah. I think Xander's fun too. Like they get to do their thing even if they lose in the end, right? Like it doesn't lock them out of the game super quick, I think.
It depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I mean, if you're not impeding Xander at all and you get an early level 3,
yeah,
it's not fun because you're just gonna sit there and get shot in your face until they have enough cards to combo off.
But yeah, I mean, I do think that the game should be balanced around the competitive players. I think a lot of that sort of comes in format diversity. There's like plenty of other games you think about. Again, Magic, where there are cards that are designed for like Modern and Pioneer, and then there are cards that are designed for Commander, right? So you get a lot of that in format diversity, which Grand Archive doesn't have right now. Obviously, it's a very new game, so it's hard to have those things. But as far as moving back to the competitive sense, something that you mentioned, I think, is a really poignant thing to talk about is that I feel like this sort of effect opens a door, right, for card design, and that's, I think, what I'm so worried about is that I think that the two of these cards are fairly balanced, and I think that they've been designed well. Don't call me a simp again, but
he is. We all are.
I think they're designed well in that like Gawain is she's very cheap and you can play her very early.
Yep.
However, she is not good if your opponent has creatures, right? Because she doesn't have any evasion. She's a 1/1. If your opponent has anything with intercept or taunt, she can't attack them. If they have any removal at all, it kills her because she's a 1/1. So it's interactable, right? And then on the other hand, the Fractal of Intrusion requires you to have a floating memory that you're going to spend to get this effect. So again, it is a little bit more resource intensive. You're not going to be able to super easily do this on turn 1 or 2 unless you're sort of giving up your ability to level for free. So it is a real cost. And then obviously I think the biggest, most important thing about these two cards as far as design goes is they only interact with your opponent's memory. So if your opponent knows that you're playing these sort of, hand attack effects, they can choose to either selectively put cards that they don't super care about into the memory, or the thing that I wanted to talk about, these cards existing, and if they become super prevalent, I think rewards a type of gameplay which I don't know if it's healthy for the game, being that these cards are bad if you don't cast any spells on your opponent's or on your own turn, and you only play on your opponent's turn.
Okay.
Because both of these cards are slow speed, right? One of them being a creature, one of them being a fractal. So it means that if you don't cast anything on your turn and you only use your mana on your opponent's turn, and especially in the end step when they're not going to be able to play these slow cards, you're super benefited for doing that. It turns these very powerful hand attack cards into dead cards if you don't ever give your opponent any memory to take from.
Right. I don't know. I wouldn't precisely call Fractured of Intrusion a dead card because it's still a fractal. It's still mana, right? Like it's still, you put it out and it's still next turn gonna save you from playing a card.
Right.
You're using a card into your memory because it costs as memory, right?
Yeah, and I mean the same way Gawain is a body that will punch you to death eventually, right?
So I think Fractal probably better without the effect than Gawain because it's 1/1.
2 mana 1/1. Yeah.
Right. Like, but at the end of the day, I still, even if that does become prevalent and people are only playing on my turn instead of theirs, I think that it's fine. Like some of the cards are fine. Like you don't have to sacrifice Gawain, right?
Right.
It's still just gonna I'm gonna punch
Yeah, so she sort of sticks around until she finally gets a target.
Right.
But I mean, this sort of trends us towards these control decks that are, because these are cards that are good for control decks, but they also are cards that control decks can play around.
Right.
So again, I think so many cards in FTC are pushing us towards these slower, water-based, control shells, both in in Mage and in Assassin. I think thankfully there's a couple of pretty enticing aggro options coming too, but I think that the most powerful cards, at least in our opinion, are these control cards. And so, you mentioned like hard counterspells, and if that's something that we ever get to. And I always worry about control becoming too powerful, because that is probably the worst thing for the health of a new game, right? Is for control to be the predominant deck.
Yeah, and I have to bring up, because it's foremost in my mind when we talk about control being the best deck in a new card game, and that's Force of Will.
Right.
They just printed so much early control into Force. Like, we got Stifle
Sure.
in the game.
That's tough.
In the color where all of the draw cards were.
Sure.
So it was really rough for a while
Sure.
playing Force of Will, because it was just like, oh, we're just all playing controlled mirrors.
Right.
So like, I can see for the game not wanting to put hard counters in even close.
Sure.
Because it does ruin the metagame.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think that these cards have very powerful effects, but are designed well enough that there is counterplay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as long as we keep getting cards that have some amount of counterplay, I think it's fine. I think
Right.
control tools that, have a game plan around them are fine. I think cards that are uninteractable are usually bad, right? And
Yeah.
so hard counterspells sort of, fit into that spot where, like, the just say no button, I think is really a really tough pill to swallow, especially for people that are, new to a game or new to a competitive card game. And so I hope in that way, I think we should hopefully be a ways away from a counterspell. We say that until they, spoil one tomorrow.
Yeah. Right after the podcast. because they like
Right.
to do
Yeah.
that.
And then we're just going to delete this episode, and it's not going to come out. And by the same way, I think, cards that like holistically look at your opponent's influence are probably something that hopefully we never see, because at least these have, an amount of counterplay. But I do worry about these cards existing, meaning that more people are going to want to play exclusively at fast speed. These control decks, these like combo mage decks that can just like not play anything on their turn, and that's fine. Until they've assembled the hand that kills you. They like play a creative shock on your end step and
Draw a bunch of cards,
yeah, move on with their life. So
draw a card past turn.
right. Yeah, exactly. Right. It leads to Drago being much more prevalent.
Right. Which is one of the reasons why I was so enticed with this and stopped playing Magic.
Right.
Because I, as a control player, was very bored of the Drago.
Right. So we'll see how things shake out. I think there's hopefully enough pressure tools still going to be in the game where control hopefully just can't run away with the format, but we'll see. I think FTC is going to be a very interesting time, especially when we're looking at Ascent and how little time we're going to have as a community to deck build for Ascent. It's, a few short weeks.
I'm almost excited for that, though.
I'm so excited. I love an open format.
Right, because it's like everyone's only gonna have the cards for like 3 weeks, unless like you're testing now, but whatever.
Right.
Like, you're only gonna have the cards for a couple of weeks, and you're just gonna it's just like that nose to the grindstone, building your deck, testing things out, seeing how things work,
Playing 1,000 games in in the span of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
God knows we'll be doing it. We're very excited to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the rules change that we got last week, we can you missed locals last week, unfortunately, but we did play with the rules change that we got last week here at our locals at Webway Games in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And it was super impactful. It's like way more impactful than I thought it would be, which is terrific. So I think for better or for worse, that also sort of adds to this control meta where all of the decks just got slower in DOA. But I think that something worth saying, because of course, we're simps or something, is that I think the dev team knows what they're doing. So that quells some of my worries as far as the meta goes, because like I said, this change that they made, when we talked about it on the show last week, I was very much like, it's good. But I didn't quite understand, how impactful it was. And I think that the dev team did understand.
Yeah.
So.
There's just been just personally, there's been so many games where I'm like, oh, I can survive this.
Mm-hmm.
I can survive this. I'm going to survive this onslaught. And then they go beseech the winds, untap, attack again. And then you're like, oh, I could have survived that.
Died. Yeah.
And I think that rule change is just, it's so healthy for the game.
Right.
It feels just so impactful.
Yeah, it slowed down the game by a good turn or two, which I think is so good.
And sometimes that's all you need for especially for like Xander players. Like,
right.
It's always right on the line sometimes, and you're just like, oh, you just need that one squeak out turn, and then you get it.
Yeah, I think Xander and Rye are the huge winners here. I played Arcane Rye at locals last week, and I went undefeated. And I was telling Steve this in the car. Every game that I won against Lorraine, I won at like 2 life, because I got that one extra turn that they weren't used to giving me, and that was enough to get over the edge. And I know that Xander feels very similarly, where like a lot of games, Xander's going to get to level 3 and he's going to like flip over 2 cards or something, and then Lorraine kills him. Where if he gets to do that a second time, it's usually his like second or third turn at level 3 that he really turns the corner. Like reveals his triple Luxem sight, or whatever.
Game
that
9 pass turn, and then
you're
like
insert that Creative Shock meme video here. I think it's huge for the slower decks. So.
Yeah, especially like there's so many times where even at locals where like I've just been sitting across the table from a Xander player, and they're just 1 card short,
right? And
I'm just like,
I'll kill you.
Here's Lorraine.
Yeah.
She can punch you in the head.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's just, it feels so good, and it makes some of the maybe Beseech the Wind less good.
Yeah, I think Beseech the Winds and Dungeon Guide are both it was like a stealth nerf to those cards, right? Which I think is such a better way of looking at it, where there was so many people before the rules change calling to like ban Dungeon Guide or whatever. But I think this is such a much more elegant solution.
Yeah.
To the power level of that card, which is, obviously a very powerful card, and I think remains to be a very powerful card, which is great. But not to the detriment of everyone else, right? Like,
right.
Lorraine got to use that card better than everyone else, and now she doesn't, which is, I think, terrific. So.
Right. Yeah. Anything that can balance the game a little bit better is good in my book, and I feel like Lorraine for a long time has been the best.
Surely. Yeah.
It's rough to say, like, because we only have 4 champions.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to balance, right?
But like
you're always gonna have somebody on top.
Right. It's hard to have a rock paper scissors though when your scissors cuts through the rock too.
True.
But I don't know. I think this is a good step forward for the game. I think Fractal Crown is going to be absolutely amazing to play. There's so many cool cards that I've actually like been thinking about, like playing Water Lorraine with that new sword.
Yep.
I love that sword.
The absolute worst part about Fractured Crown is that it's still 8 weeks away. So
it is what it is, right?
I get why they've said several times why they did the sort of spoiler like season that they did so early, is so that all the spoilers would be out before distributor pre-orders closed, right? So people like us, thank you, can get like accurate pre-order numbers because people know if they want the set or not. But goddamn, does it suck that we have all these cards we want to play with, and they're still 8 weeks out. Yeah. So
I know I'm going to be brewing up some Wind Xander.
Yeah, I think Wind Assassin looking real good.
Yeah, I think that's
Parsnip. Parmesan.
Gotta love my Parmesan.
Yep. Good stuff. So I think that was all we really wanted to talk about. Of course, if you guys are enjoying your new DOA season, invigorated by Lorraine staying rested, let us know. If you guys are going to any of your regionals, of course, go make sure to check out TM32 and their announcement about Wenginals, a good friend of the show. So if you're on the West Coast of the U.S., go check them out. There's plenty of other regionals for people to go to. I know Yeti Gaming is running one. We love Andy. And then, of course, as I mentioned last week, if you guys are not going to a regional, or if you're going to the regional in Canada at Red Riot Games, I will not be there, but I will be doing live commentary for Red Riot Games Regional on the 29th of July. So look forward to that. That'll be fun stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. Yeah. Hey, Steve.
Hey.
It was nice to
see you again. It's nice to be back.
Yeah.
I love spending my mornings in front of the camera, and I love seeing our backdrop in reverse.
You do love spending your mornings in front of the camera, all right?
I do. Lineage break at onlyfans.com.
That's true. Yeah, that's if this video gets 1 million likes,
we'll make an
go.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, there you go. I hope in my heart of hearts that somehow, some way, in 20 years, that one bites us in the ass.
Yeah, someone's like, "Hey guys, 1 million likes," and we're like,
somebody just hacks YouTube, right? Yeah. And they're just like, I know what to do.
I'm gonna see them toes.
All right, well,
with that, another great episode of Lineage Break Podcast.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one, guys.